Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for April 26th, 2023. My name is Tom Luongo, and we have a lot to talk about. It is episode 141, and we're going to be off normal script today. I've got two people in studio with me today. I've got partner in crime, Dexter White, is back for the first time in a while, and that's great to have him on. It's been way too long since I've had Dexter on the show. And then also today we have world-renowned Beanie Baby appraiser Junseth is with us as well. And we're going to do a three-way today. And I'm mostly going to turn this over to Dexter to run because this podcast is really his idea. And so I'm just going to shut up now and hand it off to the both of you. Welcome to the show, and let's do the thing.
The Beanie Baby community is going to be awash in rumors now that we're in a three-way.
True.
Right.
Thanks, Tom. Junseth, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey,
we appreciate your perspective on collectibles that have, that are
Today,
stuffed.
I'm looking at the show notes. I'm going to be giving my opinion on news, which is a topic I'm well known for.
We're going to be launching a series of new bobble-headed Beanie Babies in the figure of Don Lemon and Susan Rice, Nate Silver. It's going to be great. They're going to be worth about as much as that elephant.
Oh, Peanut. Yeah. The Royal Blue Elephant. It's worth about, right now, probably $2,000.
Yeah.
At the height of the Beanie Baby craze, $5,000.
Wow.
But the Tucker one will be worth whatever that one I showed you that my mom saved, and you were like, that's worth $1. Because there's 5,000 of them.
the claim that I'm a world-renowned Beanie Baby appraiser is more right than wrong. Hilariously.
It really is.
Truly. So we're coming together here on after a couple of busy days in the news business, and I think the first and most dramatic event clearly was the firing of Don Lemon from CNN.
Absolutely,
it was what I would call a cataclysm.
I have to agree. How are we going to go forward without the mellifluous tones of Don Lemon, haranguing people for not being sufficiently gay?
Yeah, his presence will be missed, I think. It's almost hard to even think what we can do a show about other than just to express our shock and horror at the void that this is going to leave in our lives, both as people and as a society.
I've now lost so much
Twitter material. What am I supposed to do for geopolitical stand-up now?
Well, I just think I think the real question is, where is the news industry going to go in a post Don Lemon world? You have BDL and ADL, in my opinion.
Right. Clearly.
PD and AD. PD and AD.
We're in the Ano Lemony period.
And what I don't know, Tom, what we'll do without, as you said, the maleficent tones of Don Lemon.
I don't know.
The most accurate journalist on CNN, as they call them regularly.
Because it's one of those things. How do you live without him constantly haranguing people who are less gay than him? I don't know how I live. I don't know how I'm going to live going forward. I'm really going to be bereft of.
Where do people go to watch CNN?
Airports.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't I go to their website. You can't watch it there.
It's funny.
Apparently, some people still subscribe to this thing called cable television. And I don't know that that's going to keep happening much longer. And that's kind of the premise of this podcast episode, is that we're at the death of the time slot. This is the event horizon's been crossed, and I might have to turn the sarcasm knob down just a little bit here, but it's about a few things other than Don. But to me, the idea of tuning into a show that you love at a particular time it's a cute anachronism. And we all grew up with it, right, but it's just not relevant anymore. And now, with Tucker being also fired, although not fired, Tucker hasn't been fired. We'll get to that in a second. His show's been canceled, and there's a difference. Don Lemon's been fired. He has been walked out of the building with a banker's box and told to get the fuck out. But the idea that content like this, news commentary is going to happen at 8 or 7 or whatever time versus just whenever you or I press a link and on demand. I mean, it's over. And I think there's a lot of implications there about how, we all get to talk about the things we care about and how the powers that be attempt to restrict our access to them. Because I think that this is the last vestiges of the old mechanism falling apart. And we need to think about how they're going to try to control the future more than we care about, watching this thing collapse.
It actually really is interesting because you have someone like Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro, like on the right, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, all those people. And they do record at certain times of the day. But, I could conceive of a world in which you have like a hyper network on YouTube where there's just like 11 or 12 shows going all at the same time. And not necessarily YouTube, but any, InfoWars. And you have 11 shows going at the same time and people just go in and pick whichever one they like and watch. Mm-hmm. And, I don't like, there's no reason that a network has to be this sort of like linear, thing that has one show running at any given time because of the internet. You can now basically run 37 networks at once if you want to, all in one network.
And the revenue model is, has always been a kind of a form of control. And, revenue models in advertising are based on known ratings, 8 o'clock, this is how big the demographic is. We know what we are, blah, blah, blah. And, there's just not an 8 o'clock 24 to 54 demo that's going to be a sustainable thing you can reach. And, internet advertising is going to have to figure out how to sort the audience. And then subscription is the whole other thing. And independents are coming up with a vengeance. And this sort of proctored, time, big production staff thing. I mean, I think, and again, we'll talk about Tucker in a bit, but the talent is going to drive the interaction going forward, not the time slot.
Also, and the editorial bias either.
Yeah. But when you can update and like upload and just have the thing sitting there all day long, like it used to be that, Fox News would put these clips up and you'd get, 12 seconds of Fox News. And now you just get, people do their whole show live and then they just put it up and you watch the whole thing at any time, whenever it's convenient.
And at whatever speed you want.
Uh-huh.
This is also really important. And
Tom's a 0.5 guy.
Right.
Yeah, he's Tom is a contemplative. He gets some tea. He lies in a big papasan chair. There's some incense going. There's like maybe some Hawaiian music playing.
Yeah, there's some whale
noises.
Things.
That's
what
whale
noises going on in the background. All very, very placid and calm. Absolutely, it's not a.
Do you think there are 0.5? Are there 0.5 guys out there? Is that like a type of person? Do you think? I like to imagine there are.
I don't know, but I know. I just know this for personally that I know people. They tell me all the time. They're like, I want you to listen to you at 1.5 speed. I'm like, how? I can't listen to me at 1.5 speed.
Yeah, I did that once, and those speakers literally melted, and I just had to buy new ones.
But hey, it is what it is. Like it's, we're all a little different here. But
I listen to you at 1.5 speed when I give you bourbon, but that's different. That's in person.
Well, I'm not coherent at that point. So you're like trying to find, the nugget.
That's not what I said. I just said I listen. I didn't, not that I understand anything.
Fair enough. So, I think you're right, Dexter, that ultimately this is, look, getting rid of Tucker Carlson, which is probably it's the only cable news show that was actually, worth anything listening to, right? That a broad segment of the population would even consider tuning in for is that with that gone, they now have actually, I think, told everybody that this is going to end, and they think that they're going to be able to keep this running. But the interesting part about this, I think, going even one step further, what happens to the Sunday morning talk shows, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I was noted that
is that what you call church, Tom?
No, that's what DC calls church. Because this is my point, Junseth, which is that who in the fuck actually watches Face the Nation? That they care about Christine Lagarde giving them their talking points a couple of weeks ago. Anybody outside of the Beltway? No one. No one outside of the Beltway coffee table sect actually, listens, watches these shows anymore. So now you've got to ask yourself the question of, okay, so are they going to literally keep these networks running as a fiction just to be able to mass disseminate talking points that they all distributed on Emily's List anyway? Like, it seems weird that it actually still exists as a kind of control mechanism even. So
I think there's kind of two ways we can look at. There's a lot to talk about with Tucker, but there's also some stuff happening in the background that, there's kind of three beats here. The first one's real simple. Nate Silver got canned from they kept 538, but they fired him, which I found interesting. I think he's finally being punished for being heterodox and actually, like doing the math. I can't remember when he angered them most. But there's been a few times where he just literally did the stats and was like, I think this is going to happen. And he was right. But it wasn't the reality they wanted. So they hate him. The other thing is that the head of NBC Universal / Comcast, Jeff Shell, had to step down because he had an affair. And apparently there's a sexual harassment complaint post the affair from this offshore correspondent. That's a big deal, to me, it's a big deal because of the Comcast part, not because of the programming side. I'm concerned about where they go next. I think they know the era of controlling people's opinions by controlling the talking heads on the media is coming to a close. And now I just think it's coming to flat out control the pipes, control the content. And the third beat of things that have happened is that Susan Rice left the Biden administration, which to me, that just doesn't seem like, a random event, given that Biden did a soft announce on his candidacy on Monday morning by posting a YouTube video to his website.
Right.
It's like a whole lot happened. Now, I don't know that it's all a giant related arc, but it sure seems that, the one element I'll say is that Tucker was giving RFK Jr. a lot of attention and time on the show. And that's the only through line of a giant Democratic industrial complex, power grab. Susan Rice leaving is suggests that the Bidens and the Clintons, or I should say the Obamas and the Clintons are, have got a war going on. But I don't know. What do you think about that kind of arc?
I think, the Tucker thing's interesting because I've never heard more conspiracies about why a person was fired from a job. And I actually think the most likely reason is there's something in the Dominion suit that's probably a big part of it. Second, I think that the January 6th stuff really is riling people up a lot. And, particularly the Ray Epps commentary and stuff like that is really like making Murdoch nervous. Murdoch doesn't care if the news is accurate. He cares that he doesn't get sued. He wants to make money. That's his goal.
Well, there's the Dominion, the other lawsuits coming, the Smartmatic one. And they settled the Dominion suit for $800 million ish.
Yeah.
And the next one is
Smartmatic.
got a bigger top line, number, what they settled to, but maybe they're worried about settling that one for, let's call it $1 billion. So I don't know if I buy that this is about that part of Tucker. I mean, first of all, Tucker was the one person on Fox who called bullshit on people like Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood being like having no proof of their claims.
Right.
And he flat out, there's a lot of rumors that he like uses impolite language for women behind the scenes. But if you're calling someone a crazy bitch who literally turns out to be spewing crazy nonsense, like I just don't see how that gets you fired when that wasn't said in public.
Well, I don't think so much that. I think it's his current Jan 6 stuff that is riling people up a little. Because there's a note that's not on here that maybe should be, and that's that the Proud Boys seditious conspiracy trial ended yesterday, and it's in the hands of the jury today. So they were trying to subpoena Ray Epps. They weren't able to subpoena him. The government, it was revealed, had something like 40 plus confidential human sources in the Proud Boys. and they weren't required to reveal who those people were. So the defense wasn't able to ask them questions like, did you not report a seditious conspiracy because there wasn't one, stuff like that. So like, I think with Tucker Carlson, having the tapes, being able to report things accurately like that, I think that's a big threat to the establishment. And I'm not like a big establishment guy. I don't really usually use that type of language, but I don't know. I mean, the last few years have maybe changed my tune on some of that stuff.
Well, yeah, this is a great point to shove in right here, is that Tucker was not fired. He's now being kind of hostage because he had a $20 million a year deal. So now presumably his lawyers are negotiating the severance, which basically means he's going to get paid for that full year, but he's also going to presumably be fighting for rights for all these documentaries he did that would have been trapped in Fox Nation, but now they're going to basically shit can them. There's a lot of good work there. But the key thing is Fox going to do this in a way that they try to stretch these negotiations out to keep him hostage through 2024? Because to me, that's the big question. Now, that's not how long this kind of exit severance fight should take. It should take 3 months max. It should really take 60 days. But no,
I think you're. This is the point I was going to make when Junseth was talking, which is that this is clear that they are setting up a Biden re-election run. The only way Biden gets reelected in 2024 is as a war president. And one of the neocons in Congress, let the cat out of the bag. I think it was this morning or last night. He said, "Well, this will make it a lot easier for us to keep the normies on side and in support of the war." And this is important because they are planning to try and take us into war next year. And they have to, and Tucker Carlson is by far the only real anti-war presenter on national news. So if you want to continue to construct this false narrative around Ukraine and why we need to fight it, well, I got news for you. They're setting up for the 2024 election cycle. And they can't have him out there doing this to 4.5 million people in real time, no less in replay.
But don't you think he's going to do you think they really believe they're going to hold the audience? Like, I think that right now, the way that I view the Fox News, viewing public, and he's the lead in for the whole night. I mean, I think they just lost half their viewership over this.
Sure.
I don't care what the numbers were this week because listen, when they fire Tucker, I mean, there's so many people who don't necessarily sit around all day reading news, headlines, but also are tuning in that first night to be like, are you going to tell us what the hell happened? The more interesting ratings will be next week when people are all just like, all right, well, they did it. And then they just stop watching.
Well, I think
they were down 20%, though.
I was just going to say, Tom, I think the really important thing to remember is that in its most recent drops, Q predicted all of this. Look at Tom's face.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
I know.
Well, I actually think
what's really funny about this is that I really do think that I look at this. I see them getting rid of Tucker Carlson the way they're doing it, and what they've done. It's no different than the media literally simping to John Kirby a couple of weeks ago over the Pentagon leaks, right? And saying, "How can we help you stop the dissemination of this information?" Like, they're burning all of their media control systems here, and to me, that feels like desperation.
Well, I think
either that or they know that they have the next version of this control system ready to go, and that's an interesting potential.
I think that there's another fact here, though, Dexter, in that, I think a big thing with Tucker is that he was drawing a wide audience from people that are not measured by Nielsen boxes,
right?
So I don't think their ratings are going to look drastically lower. I think that his viewership was drastically underestimated.
Oh, so you're saying they're not going to be they're going to lose the audience, but it won't be a measurable loss.
It's not the audience that they get advertisers for. So they don't even care if you're if you're a 30-year-old listening to Tucker, you're going to go on there and hear the colon the colon pill commercials and like go buy them, and like the pillows for your sciatic and shit,
well, I mean, and it's weird. I don't even know who I mean, I do think the effects of the so-called boycott have been vastly overestimated. There's a whole lot of people running around saying, "Oh, they fired him because no one was advertising." And like, you guys really are fantasizing about your effectiveness with this crap. But I literally only watch Tucker on YouTube, so I see Google's ads, but I don't know who advertises, on the broadcast. But you may have a point. I think it's more about the fact that the populism makes him dangerous rather than not monetizable. Like he's the guy bringing on RFK Jr., which, I don't know. I saw the soft launch of the Biden-Harris campaign to be weird for 3 different reasons. One, the campaign collateral was the same collateral as before, and it lacked the 2024 printing. So to me, that means they didn't do this. Like a presidential campaign does a whole lot of meetings. They do a whole bunch of graphic redesigns. They do a whole bunch of comps, and they do, they pick the font for the 24, blah, blah, blah. It seems like that didn't happen. And what they did is they took the 2020 logo, clipped off 2020, and just threw Biden-Harris out there. That's notable, first of all, because it's Harris, right? And that's like the Biden White House, and then Susan Rice leaving is, the negation of an Obama control vector. So what happened here? Like, has Kamala, as I've predicted in the past, figured out how to, circle the wagons around her? Has she been able to
racist Kamala?
Yeah, whatever. Has she been able to do that? Because I mean, that's to me the biggest surprise, is that her name's on the thing. The soft launch is also very surprising. And does that have something to do with RFK? And Bernie bowed out too. Now Bernie's like 116 years old. So, but so is Biden. Well, but Bernie at least admitted reality. He's like, I'm not doing it again.
Is this a memorable non-commercial? I mean, like, you might be right. It might be a chance to try to, like, first of all, position Biden, drop everybody out, and then eventually, delete Kamala. Because I don't think that people are wrong in thinking that the VP is up for contention. That said, I think that people underestimate how much Kamala is liked by those people.
I think that
I don't know how you refer to them here.
Your people.
My people.
I think she's. Listen, I think this is all about nullifying the convention. Like, it's like nothing's going to happen. There's not going to be any super delegate chicanery. It's done. We're just going to do the coronation, and in some way that's neutralizing Hillary. I mean, let's put it on the table, right? Like the great horror would be Biden running with Clinton as VP, and then obviously Biden would fall down the stairs, and then we'd have President Hillary. But you can't do that unless you run her. Or
that's not her style. She'd shoot him in the back 8 times, and it'd be a suicide
with a nail gun.
Right. Did I send both of you the suicide hotline? I'd like to place an order.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll use that as the title.
Hello, I've shot myself in the back of the head 3 times.
And I can't
suicide
get up.
I've ever seen. All right, so we're not going to quibble about method, but the point is putting Harris right there on the ticket from, it's normal to rerun a VP in a re-election campaign. I'm not saying it isn't. It's rare that gets switched, but it has happened. And more to the point, there's been many times, in the 70s and 80s at least, where both parties would have a little floor drama about replacing the VP. This seems designed to just be like, nah, we ain't doing any of that.
No, this to me just seems like continuity is what matters here. Rice, there's one of 2 things here going on. Either, as you suggest, Dexter, the Clintons are ascendant within the DNC industrial complex. Again, for whatever reason. And Hillary's been doing the proof of life tour recently, to use your term. But at the same time, it could also mean that, look, Rice and Obama and everybody realize that they are actually losing control of what's happening on Capitol Hill, and they are rat scurrying out of the situation before it all implodes on them. Look, the way I've been reading the tea leaves here, especially when you start to really factor in, go outside of domestic politics and you go outside of Tucker Carlson and all that, you start to get into what's going on in the financial markets, what's going on with interest rate policy and all of these things, which are informing all the politics. And to me, this is, Susan Rice leaving could just as easily be, dude, I need to get out of here before they all wind up, getting their heads chopped off. And okay, we'll run Biden and Harris because, well, he's a vegetable and she's expendable. Yeah. And we're actually, and because like the Democrats have already said, they're not going to allow Biden to debate RFK or anybody else. Like you've got RFK and you've got Marianne Williamson now. They're not going to they're not even going to they're not even going to cotton to the idea that they're even running. No, Biden is as you said, it's a coronation.
Yeah. So they're just going to pre-announce he got 90 million votes and be done with
it. That's clearly what's in the
the month before the election.
And then, well, that's the other side of this is what's going on the Republican side of the ticket? Because
I have no hope for Republicans, Tom.
I don't know.
And here's why. Like, I think that the Republicans have abandoned ground game utterly. The Democrats have 200 years of ground game that they've built up, and many of us think that their ground game involves a lot of, and by us I mean people like you, a lot of like cheating type activities. I would never accuse them of such things. Tammany Hall or Kennedy or any of the, just like they haven't. I think that those are all conspiracies and rumors, but they have a ground game. Whereas like the Republicans have not established one. And I don't know if you know who Scott Pressler is.
I do.
Scott Pressler.
I do.
Scott Pressler issued kind of a terrible warning where he basically said that the winner is going to be the one who has the best ground game, the one who has the best ballot harvesting initiatives, the one who goes door to door, et cetera. And the Republican Party just seems absolutely reticent. Romney McDaniel. Is that her name? Romney McDaniel.
I think it's Rona.
But Rona, like the virus?
Pretty much. With two N's, though. Yeah.
The Corona McDaniel?
Yeah. Corona McDonald's.
Actually, my the Rona. Yeah.
I went to McDonald's and I got Corona. Anyway.
Rona McDaniel. She is a Romney, though, isn't she?
She might as well be.
I guess I don't know. But like apparently, like the conservatives are just, the Republican Party is just not really building a ground game at all, and that doesn't surprise me. That, like, we always thought that this stuff was cheating.
Well, they've pre-negotiated the loss, right? Because right now they're basically horrified that Trump is going to, get the nomination. DeSantis is going to be unbound by this law in Florida. There's a law in Florida that says if you run for office, if you're a state office holder and then you run for another office, you have to resign. And they're adding in a little line in the law, and it's going to get signed soon. That just says unless you're running for VP or president of the United States.
Unless you're Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, well, basically the whole purpose of the law in the first place, it's not like people were worried about that the agriculture commissioner was going to run for Secretary of State and then couldn't, keep processing, concealed applications. It was always to prevent a governor from, doing a 6-year term and, or a 2-year term and leaving. But here we are pretending that's not why they passed it in the first place. But anyway, DeSantis will be running and he will not be having to resign. But, I think the other element with Tucker is that Paul Ryan is on the board of Fox News. So, you want to talk about people who surrender in advance. The Romney campaign didn't have a ground game at all. And then they outsourced all of their software to like Democrats. And then we're surprised that on election day, it crashed and they had no hot spare. So,
could it be said that Paul Ryan surrendered at I Do?
What, by marrying a Democrat? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, his wife is like a Democratic activist. I've always thought that a rather suspicious thing for a speaker of the House.
Surrendered at I Do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the GOP establishment, or not nominally known as the GOP. Nothing has changed. They've been against any populist insurgency coming from the Republican Party for years. You just
Don't
laid
say
out the Romney
insurgency.
campaign. Well, the McCain campaign was the same way. This is the way it goes, and it's always been this way to give us the illusion of choice. And as long as Mitch McConnell is running the party, nothing's going to change. And there has to be an entire breakdown of both political parties' industrial complexes that they exist. So to Junseth's point about there not being the Republicans not having a ground game, well, why is that? Well, because that's a feature, not a bug. And all the way down the line, why do the Democrats have a ground game? Because all the money from all the NGOs and all the funny bucks that come out of the Treasury Department at zero bound built all this infrastructure for them to not cheat, just win. Give me a break. Like, we all know how this is played. These people create reality by putting their thumb on the scale of reality and then accurately describe reality. And we're supposed to then believe that they weren't like involved in the creation of the reality in the first place, that it's just natural, man. That's the work that works out this way because we're just the better people, because we're Democrats and we're good and Republicans are stupid and evil. What else is new?
The other thing that's interesting to me about what's going on in the modern era is I've noticed this sort of like control that they've begun to exercise on the boomer tumor. The boomers are aging out. They're getting old, and they're not going to be able to stick around for a lot longer. People like Dianne Feinstein and such, and they're just trying to get them to resign so that they can install who, and I'm sure this is going to happen on the Republican side too. It just happens that the Democrats are kind of aging out first for whatever reason. But they're like, you'd think that there would be some turnover, where you'd have maybe some younger people, which I don't know if that's scarier or, if you just have like a Democratic Party filled with AOCs, maybe that's worse. But they're not going to let this sort of like natural replacement happen. That to me is the great replacement, is the boomers out of Congress. And
I agreed. I mean, our generation, mine and Dexter.
What I would give, Tom, for Gen Xers to take over. Well, that would be my prayer. I like Gen Xers, in my opinion, are and maybe geriatric millennials are the last generation left that I'm willing to like give that I wish would take power, and the younger generations scare the bejesus out of me.
Well, exactly. And so now you also understand why Dianne Feinstein at 90 years old, who can't even like remember her name on any given Thursday, is still in the Senate, and why Joe Biden is president.
Dianne Feinstein.
What's that?
Yeah.
Matt Damon. Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, exactly. No,
hey,
it's ridiculous. Like, this is where we are. And this has been a feature of our electoral system for ages, and it's why we have an incumbent win rate of 95%, because the barrier to entry to actually run new people is 90% of your capital is spent just getting on the ballot.
Well, Tom, you should talk.
Forgetting building a grassroots campaign. It's never going to happen.
You should talk to Bruce Fenton. He's got a new perspective on this, having run up in New Hampshire this last year. Right. He and I politically are not necessarily aligned. I hate you libertarians. I despise all of you. But he's a very strong libertarian, and he would tell you that, like, he got some money, obviously not a ton, but his opponent had a ton of money and didn't show up anywhere and won just because, like, he just had a ton of money. She had millions of dollars, airdropped in from the party. And it just, competing nowadays involves just enormous amounts of cash. And the Democrats have a different type of cash management system. I think it's really interesting. I read all the political books, all of them. I'm a voracious reader, and I think the most interesting political book to come out in the last 10 or 15 years is Donna Brazil's book on the time period of the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. Was it 2016? Right. With the hack and everything else of the DNC. And she reveals this thing which no one has ever brought up, and it's not a conspiracy. It's Donna Brazil who brings it up, and showing that, like, the Democratic Party was about to go bankrupt. And what happened is that Hillary Clinton gave them a $3 million loan, I believe it was, and they basically ceded control of all of the funds and expenditures to her before even the primary was finished. Mm-hmm. So, people wonder what happened with Bernie. Well, I can explain that. That's easy. And so that's the thing. Like, the Democrats and politics is just dirty. I don't want to say it's just the Democrats. I'm sure that both parties are very dirty, but the Democrats have some particular, like, very specific types of dirt that they're willing to do that it seems like the Republicans, at least to date, have been immune from.
Yeah, but the Republicans are the controlled opposition for people who still have a shred of dignity for themselves, self-dignity, to vote for them, as opposed to the openly dirty communist Democrats. It's that simple. And, you know, they're the people who hate America like voting for Democrats.
Openly communist, dirty Democrat. I don't know that you have any proof of that. I mean, accepting money in the back of a Buddhist temple is not openly communist necessarily.
Well, no, not
it's clandestinely communist.
Just clandestinely
communist. Okay, well, you know,
so openly he stands corrected. Then
will be most of the actual bills that wind up.
And Tom, I think it's important to remind you that many of the Democratic Party members like Hillary Clinton have participated greatly in the capitalist system. She was one of the world's greatest cattle futures traders.
I agree.
It's true.
So, you know, it's important to remember that they're not.
Well, you know, commies like making money. They just don't want. They just, you know. Remember, it's serfdom for it's serfdom for thee, but not for me. That's
serfdom for thee.
We're going to get some cattle options traders on the show one day, and we're going to recreate the actual probabilistic performance of Hillary in those trades, because that's something I really want to know.
Okay.
But
yeah. So where do we go from here, guys? I mean, what do we do, right? I mean, it's very clear that they are moving. It's not just the death of the time slot, Dexter. It really is about so much more than that. And can they turn that to their strategic advantage? That's the thing that I've been trying to figure out. I always look at these moves and go, okay, well, they clearly made this move for a particular reason, right? So what's that going to do for them strategically, one, and then two, what's the counter move, and then what's the counter move to that? Because this is the way you have to, like, you know, game plan. This is how they whiteboarded it. So now it's our job to
they're always whiteboarding control and then the perpetuation of control. So I think, you know, if you're throwing the cards in on the media as we know it, they're certainly preparing on the pipes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't dug into the Restrict Act very much, but it's one of these bills where it's like whenever there's a shooting.
Is that the TikTok app?
Yeah, where they ban VPNs, and like it's like when there's a shooting, they pull off the shelf all this language from like the 70s, and, you know, they're obsessed with like grenade launchers and like, you know, whether a gun has a foregrip or a barrel shroud, and it's like, you're like, what is this about? And it's like, the bottom line is they have a library of tyranny, you know, templates, and they're just waiting, right? So with the Restrict Act, you know, they've been against VPNs since they were conceptualized.
Right.
And so of course they throw that language in there, and then people freak out and they take it out. But like, this is what they're doing. You know, they're looking at, you know, I worry about things like deep packet inspection and VPN bans. And if the head of NBC can be, you know, knocked off, it's like, it's not about NBC. It's about Comcast. You know, it's, you know, AT&T kicked off Newsmax, but then they let them back on, and everyone's like, oh, it was just a fight about terms. But it really wasn't. You know, I think they've been kind of testing the water on how they can, you know, get rid of the alternative, you know, ways of just talking to an audience. Right. And we'll see what happens with Rumble. They seem to have, from what I understand of their technical footprint, it seems pretty good. But, you know, I do think they rely on AWS, on Amazon Web Services. You know, I think, you know, I want to keep paying attention to the sort of structural moves to take out the alternatives. Because, you know, 3 years ago, we all thought like, oh, they're going to censor us into oblivion. And then the last couple of years, it seemed like, oh, they took their foot off our throats. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to go right back on right about now, because they're not going to let us come into 24 shit talking Biden. You know, basically a year from today, they need to have really shut down everything that might lead to a summer before the election swing.
I think that everyone's mistaken about the boot on the throat. I think what people need to understand is that the Democrats have figured something out, and that's that no one has ever hacked lawfare before, and going after like the meme stuff, for example. Who's the guy that
Mackie.
Mackie, who just went to jail for memes. And there's all sorts of other stuff. Like there's all these weird precedents that they're setting. The Proud Boys trial, I think, is an important one. But there are all these weird, unprecedented precedents that they're setting, and it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 10 years before the Supreme Court works the damage out that they're doing right now in the system, where they're, and I think what they figured out is that there's infinite attempts to do this, and I think the Republican, like I tend to view politics very much like Silicon Valley views products. I think that the Democrats have a feature set in their electioneering product that the Republicans have never implemented in theirs. And I think parity is what the Republicans got to focus on right now, bringing their feature set to parity, and that will allow them to actually start, innovating on how to cheat.
You would hope that the GOP wasn't that corrupt.
Well, I think in a Nash equilibrium world, the thing you have to do to respond to corruption is like is match it, right? And I don't like that, but you have to get to the level of corruption that they are, match it, and then if they escalate, you escalate. If they escalate, you escalate until like the escalation stops.
I think the problem is that the GOP is run by people who actually are there to architect its
that are sympathizing.
Yeah, they're literally like I've never trusted Paul Ryan. I mean, I've never, I never trusted John McCain, and I don't mean I didn't trust them as Republicans. I didn't trust that they were Republicans, and that's just, I mean, Romney too. Like, there's just, we can take this as a neocon versus, everything else too. Like, Hillary and Romney and Biden have more in common than anything I want to be a part of. And they act that way, and they, everything they do is to perpetuate that. And, if one thing Tucker was doing was getting all the people in their little cloistered, I won't talk to them boxes to start hanging out together. And that was a threat that could not be tolerated.
No, absolutely. That is the big one, is that, it's things like Tulsi Gabbard leaving the Democratic Party, winding up on Tucker Carlson, constantly talking about the issues that matter to you and me and everybody else, which is that we happen to have a political class that is that's completely in the tank for each other's final agenda, which is perpetual war for perpetual empire for perpetual debt. And you're like, okay, so is there really a difference? You know how I feel about this, that the neocons themselves and Davos are two radically different organizations, even though they on the surface have the same goal, which is to destroy the Russians and the Chinese. But beyond that, what they really want is who's going to run the empire after they've destroyed the Russians and the Chinese. That's the big one. And to my and Carlson every night was going out there saying, why are we doing any of this? And that's why he was dangerous, because the one thing, and this goes all the way back to Justin Raimondo, one of those hated libertarians, by the way, 23 years ago, saying things like, oh, by the way, here post 9/11, and we're going to the Iraq war. Oh, by the way, the anti-war left and the libertarian right need to come together to fight the empire. And here we are. And they squash. We finally get somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. And
I'm very pro-war.
I'm sure you are, Junseth.
I am. I've been pro-war for many years. I think that no war makes weak men. It's the source of the soy boys, Tom.
And you're going to really enjoy the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Good. We can put the trannies at the front line and the Gen Z right behind them. And
that's not who's going there, though.
Who's going to go?
Well, generationally it will be, but
generationally it will be. So they're going to send all the young Americans to go fight and die overseas, while they import everybody else from the rest of the world in order to become the new.
Well, I would say
police and fire.
The Ukraine war has been very interesting, because the phrase "we'll fight Russia to the last Ukrainian" has become popular. I think that you and I probably don't share sympathies on the Ukraine war, but I'm like very okay with it. A lot of this stuff I'm very okay with. I tend to be very much more okay with war than I think the average libertarian or conservative. Like, I am not a giant advocate of deleting wars. Never have been. That's highly offensive to everybody. I know.
No, everyone's really mad. I think there's nothing worse. I mean, from a pure social Darwinist or cycle of history perspective, yeah, we understand the cycle. You know, weak times or good times make weak men make bad times. We know the cycle, and I understand that it's inevitable, but it's not something that we should attempt to maximize, because that is, and this is clearly what's going on here. And we're not in a normal cycle this time through. This is the culmination, I think, of a good 300-year history of building up a set of cycles that are culminating all at once. And the war that we're going to fight now is going to be one where they're literally attempting, I think they're going to fail, but their attempt is to have complete control over the information space in a way that they never had previously. And
I agree with that. I don't like that kind of war. I want hot wars with bullets.
This war has been fought to a standstill, and what's amazing is nobody on either side, everybody has picked a side in this thing. And the people think they know, they're flying Ukrainian flags, or Republicans are all for Russia or whatever. Some groups are, some aren't in the Republican side. It's very schizophrenic. But what's remarkable is no one's really looked at the actual battle space, and everyone has these fantasies about, like a couple months ago, every single person on the right that is pro-Russia at all was telling me that there were 500,000 Russian troops ready to wipe the whole slate clean, and they would not stop, right? 500,000. I was like, that's just nonsense propaganda, and it's not true. And I dug in on it, and then it just disappeared. And you just didn't hear about the 500,000 Russian troops anymore. No one ever said, oh, well, they went somewhere else. They just weren't talked about. And this has been the whole thing. And what the reality is the U.S. can't move troops into this space. The U.S. has vast logistical talents, but you can only move what you have. And basically the reality is you look at the map and you look at the calendar and you're like, this thing has passed obviously the beginnings of the game are over, the mid game is over, and now here comes the end game. And I'm using a chess analogy, how fast we get to the stalemate. Nobody's mating anyone. It's just going to be a denouement of like nothing. We're going to look back and be like, wow, that just kind of seemed real dumb. Like, it's not going to come to a dramatic end. And I think that's pretty obvious from all the pieces. We are in an information war where everyone's picked a team and they're super passionate about being on Team Ukraine or Team Russia, but they don't let facts, get in the way of like their, of who they're rooting for. And that's a new thing. Like before, when we would be involved in analyzing wars, we actually had media on the ground showing us battles. Now, half the battle footage you see, and I mean throughout the entire conflict, is recycled footage from another war where somebody's like painting the colors differently. Like, hey, look, it's a Ukrainian. It's like, no, that's not. That's from Syria. Right. I think, like you said, it is information. The intensity of the war, too, at many times has been vastly overestimated. Obviously there's always fake casualty numbers in war, always. But the level of Russian or Ukrainian potency has been consistently nonsense. And it's to a point, too, when you look at the actual zones of conflict, you realize that we don't see anything on the so-called national news. Not that I really watch a lot of it, but this is not Desert Storm, right? It's all the same footage on Telegram and Twitter over and over again. It's very different. I just, I think that it's already been an information war more than a physical war, in the sense that most people, what they think they know is largely propaganda rather than actual war reporting.
Yeah. And I've come to a similar conclusion about this as this has played itself out. So, and it's clear also that the focus now is moving off of Ukraine anyway. I mean, I don't want to go, I don't want to go into, this is not really what this podcast is supposed to be about, but I'm watching the fights over Africa and, Egypt and the IMF and the World Bank stuff. Like that stuff it's a different podcast. It's a different thing to talk about, but you can see how the domains are shifting. And I've always said from the beginning, from the moment this war started, that this would, metastasize into many, many different domains at the same time, as it does exactly kind of what you've been saying since Dexter, since the beginning of the war, which is that the Russians don't have the ability to wipe out the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians don't have the ability to wipe out the Russians. And here we are 14, 15 months later. And then the question is, was that always, whose plan was that? Or was it, was that even the plan or not the plan? Or did everybody just react in real time to the situation, saying, all right, fine, we're going to fight this thing out across multiple different domains. And so now we're staring at this stuff going, okay, now what? What does this mean to a politically now in many ways spent West? Like, what do they do? Like it's clear that there's a group of people attempting to maintain control over this. Call them Davos, call them the neocons. I think they're fighting amongst themselves. They're clearly still trying to push a particular agenda forward. So now the question is, what do these moves gain them if they lose in these other areas where they weren't able to win, right? And the war is a standstill, which is a strategic defeat in some ways for both sides, but certainly for what the West had originally planned on this. Then what are they? How are
I
they?
don't think the West planned on getting involved at all, Tom.
I don't either. I think they thought that they had armed the Ukrainians to the point where the Ukrainians were going to be able to beat the Russians, and they really believe their own bullshit.
Oh, do you? I don't think so. I think they thought the Ukrainians were going to lose on day one. I think the West didn't step in until the Ukrainians mounted a defense.
Timeline check, though. I think what Tom was just referring to was more about not just like the month before, February of last year. Like,
you mean like
he's talking a longer timeline.
I'm talking about the 8 years that we spent building up the Ukrainian army. Okay. And them digging trenches and them, looking at the trench warfare all across the center of the Donbass. Like, I've looked at some of that stuff going, how are the Russians going to get through that? Like, both sides know how to fight a war in eastern Ukraine. Like, they've been fighting over that territory for 1,000 years. Like, they're good at it.
Yeah, and it's well-known turf. Like, that's right. A very important part of any battle space is, if you know the terrain as well as they do, to the point of, they use the almanac very consistently in this war because they know exactly when. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to say Rasputitsa correctly, but mud season is literally been part of the game going back to the 1600s. So
right. I just not to overrun you or anything, Junseth, because I do think that there's certain aspects of this. I think certain people in the West wanted the Ukrainians to lose, and I think other members of the West wanted the Ukrainians to win. And I think that this is part of I keep highlighting there's a real split within our oligarchy as to what it is their actual strategic goals are. And I look at the EU and I look at those European colonialist, frankly, shitbags, and I say to myself, they clearly want to run their technocratic model that they've imposed on the United States through California. They've done it in the EU, and they're continuing to run that model for as long as possible. And they have political control over the White House, and they're going to keep using it for as long as they can. And if they can undermine every one of our institutions in the process, then so be it. Because it's a feature. That's what we have vandals in charge. It's really obvious. So you want war? We've got war. It's the war's at home.
The oligarchy part is, I think, the key phrase here. And just to kind of, what we need is a place in the United States where free speech is allowed and people can actually debate things without, having their ability to speak to others controlled by somebody who has power they shouldn't have. Right. We shouldn't have the government giving, ban lists to Twitter, and the fact that
that never happened.
Right. It never happened. It's an actual unbelievable crime against the idea of America. And, until we have an actual marketplace of ideas, we're going to have a State Department believing their own bullshit, like Tom was saying. The reason our foreign policy is so dumb sometimes is because it's been completely insulated in the so-called rooms with the whiteboards, where the smart people hang out. They've never had their dumb ideas challenged because they grow up in a world where, forget right and left, there's just no alternate view. And this is really, I think, the big point of why Tucker had to go. Tucker is willing to look at the premises. He's gone into an idea and then say to his audience and document it where he was wrong. Nobody does that. And nobody even has an opportunity to do that. Or if you do ever admit you're wrong, it's like the complete crucifixion. I mean, this idea that one can disagree with others in order to rip apart what you think is a bad argument, and they can do the same to you, and then both of you realize you have a defect in your belief system. That's why we used to have debate. Like, that's what Plato's Academy was for. This was a big part of the Western tradition, and that has been largely destroyed since the 60s, and certainly since the 90s in US academic culture. And it's now part of our State Department, and it's like, if you want to know how we got to the ideas of Ukraine and how little we understand about Russia's capabilities and deficits and our own, well, that's the reason, is everybody just gets a list of shit they're supposed to believe, and then they act on it. They never challenge, they never correct, they never contemplate. And this is what's going forward, where what worries me the most, if they're going to take control of the means of communication, the content doesn't matter, because now it's just like they'll just use so-called AI to filter out anything that's not perfectly party line.
I do feel like in some ways we're in an absurdist play of sorts. I mean, the Twitter files are a perfect example, where you have these very specific examples where the government comes to Twitter. Like, someone walks in and goes, "Oh, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?" And and the Democrats are like, they look at that. All the liberals in America look at that and they go, "Well, the government just emailed them and pointed out some accounts they didn't like. That's not the same as telling them to get rid of them." And you're like, "Wait, dude,
it's exactly the
same." What? Like, what? Could you imagine if the tables were turned? Like, this is what we've been saying. Like, so we live in a world where there's no evidence that's enough for anybody that is ideologically sort of possessed to believe. There's none. There's nothing. So, like, the Russiagate thing with Trump, anything that like has happened, the left moving against the right, you could literally watch the left right now put the Democrats put the Republicans all over America into death camps, and you'd have the leftists go, "Well, they just put the bad ones in death camps. I mean, they wanted them gone anyway."
When I say death camps, I mean
but I see this now. Like, there's no. I'm not saying that they're putting us in death camps, but I am seeing this incredible thing where you can reveal truth to people, and even the revelation of the truth is not enough for them to believe what is true about the truth. And that's, it's really a weird sort of thing. It is Shakespearean in some sense, and it's really strange to watch, because there's no. We have facsimiles. We have historical facsimiles. I mean, the "won't you rid me of this meddlesome priest" is a famous line for a reason.
Right.
And watching the FBI and the CIA and all these other organizations jump in and literally use this tactic for getting rid of their opponents is incredible. And the other one is the other day, the admission that the administration was the one who solicited and put together that letter that they knew to be a lie. From the Biden administration, they got 50 people to sign a letter that said that the laptop from Hunter Biden was Russian disinformation. That came directly out of the campaign.
I know.
It came from Blinken before, obviously, they won the election. Into the
to me, that's state. The biggest scandal that has.
It shows you that it's all a farce. Blinken was working with the Biden campaign at the time, not Secretary of State. You were talking about the end of the Trump administration, and he goes into the Trump administration, alleged Trump administration, and just goes into all the usual suspects and goes, "Here's what we need out of you guys for this, little bit of campaign oppo." And there's no Hatch Act violations, right? All these people just willfully write fiction for the campaign, and they all have jobs and pensions, no discipline, no nothing. Like, what the fuck,
Yeah, well,
and under oath, what do they?
So Tommy, we had a little stutter there. So
yeah, under oath, I was just going to say though, they admit that they did it because, quote, "I wanted Biden to win."
Which is not a political motivation, apparently, when you're a government employee.
Apparently not. To Junseth's point about, the people, you can show people the truth and they can then deny it. That goes right back to Yuri Bezmenov, sitting there on Dick Cavett explaining the mechanisms of propaganda. And you can I will be able to, if I do my job right, I can show people the truth, and they'll just go, yeah, but I don't believe it.
Yeah.
And this is why
now we're at the point where we can take people to the point where, and they can taking people to the point where now men can get pregnant.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, like the debates, like we're debating territory that is settled, right? Like,
right.
Can men be women? No.
No.
Can like men get pregnant? No. Can men have periods? No. Like, can women have penises? No. We can give them facsimiles of these things, right. But no, that they can't. And it's like, okay, this notion that I have to accept these things that are truisms, that are just acceptable, like, before you know it, we're going to be debating whether the sky is blue, and literally, like, that'll be the white supremacist narrative will be that the sky is blue.
No, the white supremacist narrative will be that math is racist and 2 + 2 does in fact equal 5.
Well, yeah, I mean, but math has always been like, what's the famous
math
Ohio
is racist.
Where
they make this.
They tried to they misdefined pi, like, but yeah, there is this ridiculous kind of war on reality, and I don't think it's the Bezmenov thing. I think it's weirder than that, because it's not propaganda anymore, Tom. Like,
no,
people are co-opted to the point where, and tribal enough, that they don't need to be told anymore what to believe. They will, like, you'll see in a debate, someone will make a point that relies on a facsimile of truth, or like something that is a truism, and at the end of the debate, the conclusion will be the guy who spoke truth was racist.
Yeah. Well, it's about negation of the other side. These are this is the echo chamber. This is the harvest of that arrangement. We have people who just they will not listen and will not speak to the bad people, right? And this is not going to end with people suddenly realizing, oh, I'm lacking a whole lot of perspective, I'm going to go talk to those people I've demonized into subhuman status.
Well,
like that doesn't happen at the end of that story.
This is supposedly, honestly, engaging in this behavior is supposedly the proximate cause as to why Don Lemon was fired from CNN for treating Ramaswamy badly, feedback Ramaswamy badly, right? And because it was clear that he was just, way off the reservation. But obviously,
what Lemon did was he denied Vivek a right to speak about issues of slavery. So Don Lemon, who was born in probably 1968 to 74 somewhere, like, or maybe a little later, like, was never a slave. And like his, whether or not Ramaswamy is the child of an immigrant, because he's running for president, so I assume he's born in the United States. I just don't know. But like, like saying that an Indian guy can't talk about American history because you're black, Don, it's just stupid. And yet, like, that's what we live in.
But, again, that's just chum to ensure getting rid of Don Lemon under those circumstances. He was probably just too expensive, and CNN can't afford him anymore. And they needed an excuse to get rid of him. And they can go, oh, look, see, we were being even handed. The same way we used to have the fairness doctrine. We had to give both sides equal amount of time to talk. Well, I got news for you. You want to get rid of Tucker Carlson? Well, we got to fire, Don Lemon. Oh, look, but we see
CNN's been redesigned. Yeah, I think it's very simple. CNN's been redesigning their whole thing, and he doesn't really fit into the new, like, more moderate CNN. It's fine.
This is why I've been an advocate of recentrification camps. Everyone's got to go into the camp and prove that they can nuance all the stories that everyone's tribal about. You don't have to be a lefty. You don't have to be a righty. I don't care. But all the QAnoners, all the left wingers who believe Russiagate got to go. Everyone's got to go. And then they just ask you questions. And if you can provide a complete understanding of each news event, then it doesn't matter if you leave a commie. That's okay, as long as you have a full understanding of each news event that you have, like, that has radicalized you. Well, this is my proposal.
It's similar to my proposal, which is that, in any debt ceiling negotiation that the Republicans put forth, that they cut defense spending by 20% and reapportion
we have wars, Tom.
What's that?
Then how will we have wars?
We have plenty of money for wars. So we can take, but we can take $100 billion and we can, throw it out there for everybody on both sides, the QAnoners and the shit libs, to get therapy and just go through it, and we'll just pay for it. And it sucks. I hate, I don't want to deal with this, but everybody can just write it off on their fucking taxes, and we'll just subsidize it. We'll get it done with, because it's better. I'd rather have a whole bunch of them, like, having some struggle session with their therapist than having the struggles therapist with me on freaking Twitter. It would be healthier for the entire country, because maybe, just maybe, some of that money will go to a good use, because we currently know that it's not. But we got plenty of money for wars. All we have to do is just keep running. It's like,
you're the kind of guy that thinks Kyle Rittenhouse didn't take a gun over state lines.
Yeah, no, I am that guy. Yes. Yeah. Like, whatever.
It's just really interesting to me, the amount of truth that, and the thing is, like, when I talk to people about this stuff that are on the other side, they really don't know the facts. There's the famous Trump said drink bleach video, the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell instantly if someone watched the press conference or not, simply by asking them, who was Trump speaking to? And if you watch the press conference, you know who it was. And if you didn't watch the press conference, you will swear you did. Everyone swears they watched the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they didn't, because they will tell me that he was speaking to Deborah Birx. Every single person. So that's been my filter for knowing whether people actually watched it or not.
Was she there? Or she was
there. She was in the room.
Okay.
And the news reported that he was saying it to her. But if you watch the conference, that he wasn't.
Right.
And he didn't even say drink bleach, So, like, these are little things that, like, I've got little tricks for all of these, because, like, I think it's very important right now to, like, watch all of the raw material, because I don't think you can possibly remain centered if you don't. To Dexter's point, that is I think the death of the time slot. I think that's what that is, right? Like, because you no longer go to the news organizations to, like, watch that stuff. You're now, like, on YouTube, and you're watching the raw footage.
Right. You can't. Well, we haven't been able to trust the edited feed for a long time, right? The whole, how do people speak in public, and not sound like complete retards, in order to avoid the bad soundbite, right?
Yeah.
And so we wound up with completely sanitized speech. We wound up with all of that. And so, yes, all of this, I think, is the end of this. And I think it's going to be, one of the things about this is every time that phrase comes up, I just think end of the time slot, death of the time slot, golden age of podcasting. The ability for people to just sit down, hash stuff out, say, things that, the other person may or may not agree with, and then have a relatively civil conversation about it and try and work through nuance, issue. And if they don't have and be able to honestly say, you know what, I don't have an opinion about that.
And a plurality of centrist positions, meaning that instead of having to adopt an entire basket of beliefs, guns, abortion, foreign policy, that your party, if everything has to go on one of two sides of one line, it's a disaster. And we've all lived through this long enough to know that it doesn't work. So, the powers that be, whoever they are, they love the idea that they have to get everybody conforming on one set of beliefs, because it's very easy to condition. And the time slot itself was a great tool for that. This is where it's frightening, that we're either breaking free of this means of control, and maybe it is the golden era of podcasting, and frankly, of, like I said, a plurality of centrist, negotiated centrist conclusions for two parties who don't share a lot of other things. But, like, the more people can just meet and be like, this is the, either the midpoint or the agreed, settlement of some topic of disagreement, then, that leads to a more peaceful world, where a lot of the people who derive their power from exploiting anger and impulsiveness, then what do they have? They have nothing. And so they're going to fight really, really hard to prevent the growth of a mechanism for this alternative. And I do think the old way is falling apart just for mechanistic reasons. The question is the way to preserve that is to prohibit us from talking to one another. I think they have a lot of cards to play there, and they will play them.
Dunning-Krugerism, I think that is, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems in most of these debates is that, everybody's an expert in everything that happens. The gun debate's probably the most long-standing version of this, where, every Democrat you talk to, every liberal you talk to will say, nobody wants to take away your guns, right? And then you say, well, then why are they banning semi-automatics? And they'll be like, well, because they shoot so fast. You're like, well, that's like all guns, man.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a trap. Like being like the pedantic clip versus mag versus whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that, people are upset about, the event, the shooting that happened, and then they don't understand, the technology of guns. That doesn't mean that's not a good enough reason about why they're wrong. Like,
no, I don't mean that. What I mean is that, like, the problem that I see in all debates now is that people are believing their own BS. Like the Dunning-Kruger effect is real. These people believe that they're experts in all of the things. And I'm not saying that, like, this is evidence that they're wrong about all things, or that people like that shouldn't have an opinion. I'm just saying that in all of the debates that people have now, everyone takes a position as an expert. And so during COVID, everybody was a virologist for a week. Go back to the debate about net neutrality. All of a sudden, every single person understood the internet stack, and every mommy blogger was talking about how evil it was to oppose net neutrality. Like, this is it's really weird. This has been going on for a while. I think that the net neutrality version is really the first time that I watched recruitment for a position happen. Google really did a lot of that. But there's just getting past the fact that people believe they can become experts in everything is just it seems to me to be a new phenomenon in politics. And
I think I wouldn't know if it's a new phenomenon in politics. It's a refinement, almost to the point of being, and it's part of the refinement comes from the fact that everybody is so worried about the future, the anxiety over the future. Their actionable time preference becomes higher. Therefore, they don't have time to listen to nuanced debate. We have this existential threat, climate change, Davos, whatever it is. I'm just as susceptible to it as the rest of the people. I get angry with my fellow libertarians for going, dude, we don't have time for you to nurse your adolescent arguments about the Federal Reserve. It exists. It's either can it be an ally or not? Get over yourself. Like, I live in the real world. I don't want to hear about how many Rothbards can dance on the head of a pin. I said this recently. The thing here is that we can't. This is a refinement of that process because of the anxiety that we all feel about what's happening, which is the death of all these institutions that have been systematically and undermined, that used to circumscribe our lives and give us some semblance of normalcy from which we could debate little things. Now the crazies who think that it was ever important to decide what is and is not acceptable behavior vis-a-vis trannies has become now the hill to die on, and they just keep shifting that window farther and farther away from the center because they can't do anything else, because to admit anything is to mean that they've got to re-examine everything and, oh my God, actually engage with the other side again. And that is, again, what we said earlier about Tucker Carlson, which was that he was starting to get the center, the people who weren't crazy on either end, to coalesce. And that's the thing that they're scared of the most. And we're seeing that look at what's happening in France. Like the pension reform in France, they kept telling us that the people are angry in France because they're raising the pension age from 60 to 64.
They're going to have to work till they're 48 years old.
They're revolting in France because BlackRock owns their goddamn pension funds, and that's what they're angry about. Because they know that the government sold them out and destroyed their lives. They know who did this.
Every place where there's any consistency is a refuge for the intellect to contemplate, how things truly work. And that's why all places of consistency need to be taken apart. This is the same sort of Marxist playbook of how to initiate the revolution. you tear apart. You have to tear apart every place that there is comfort and consistency. It has to be chaos. And, this is where, people don't like to hear about, like, people are so asleep when it comes to the fact of Marxism never went away. They've never read about it. They've never understood the actual level of depravity there is in the way this is all envisioned. And yet, we have like a complete global rebirth. And if you don't understand that China is investing in this, and Russia, that's a whole nother podcast about like where Russia is on the actual political arc. Tom and I differ pretty far on that. I personally I don't have a good explanation about why they're re-erecting statues of Lenin in the Donbass if they're not in any way sympathetic to Marxism. But we can leave that for like a separate episode. But, it's why can't we have nice things? It's because the commies know that if we have nice things, like we don't listen to their bullshit. And so, here we are.
Yeah. No, I think that's very, very, very real. And that's where the real war is. And, the business cycle create the natural perturbations of the business cycle, and which are reflections of human psychology, create the cycle of weak men, strong times, weak times, and all that. That happens normally.
I think strong men, Tom, the recipe there is more wars, less whores.
No, sorry. I just don't think that we need maximum amplitude of that cycle. I'm sorry. I want the amplitudes of that sine wave to be.
That should be the name of the episode, Dexter. More wars,
more nukes, less kooks. We can do that one.
More wars, fewer whores. I mean, again, I'm not disagreeing with the fundamental premise of what you're saying. I just don't buy the maximization problem. I refuse to chuckle and clapsitarian. I'm sorry. I just can't do it.
Yeah, just can't do it. He's just good at baiting you too.
Yeah, I know he is. And that's fine.
I am a master baiter.
Yeah,
we knew that joke was coming. We could see it coming.
Well, that was low hanging.
Yeah, it's like the bridge you live under.
It had to be done.
I just also think it's important that people, I also have to clarify for people, who might not have ever met you before, Junseth, that you're not always explicitly serious about all of these things when you do this. So
he still doesn't understand you, John. Anyway,
so final thoughts. We're at, this is a good time. I think we're getting to
I think we had a good chat. It's I think my final thought is I'm going to keep my eyes out on what happens next. There's a lot more to this Tucker drama that I think the interesting thing is, how does it end? Like, when is he standing up his Rumble channel or whatever? Because
I think he's going to expand the Daily Caller, and I think it could very well become.
Yeah, I mean, listen, bottom line, he's going to have a platform, and it's not going to be on CNN. I think we're all probably willing to bet that. But
wouldn't it be nice to have a big competitor to like the Daily Wire on the right? It'd be nice to see that. It'd be nice to see the conglomerate right wing like sources actually grow. It'd be nice to see some competition that doesn't.
I would like to see Tucker just stand up his own production company and do the type of work he was starting to do on Fox Nation with these little micro, 50-minute documentary type content. Right. I think that's great stuff. And he's got the writing talent and the intellect to do it. And that would be a great place. He could line up 300,000 subscribers in a week, and then you're done. And
it would be a no-brainer for him. And
then people would stop listening to this.
What a loss.
And it would actually force. I mean, look, dudes, if Dave Rubin can do this, anyone can do it.
He's the worst.
Like, seriously, if Dave Rubin can do this,
we do agree on some things.
I'm not going to say any one way. I'm not going to. I don't even have an opinion about Dave Rubin. That's how much I don't. He's
so gay.
So, If Tucker Carlson hasn't figured out how to do this, and Dave, all he has to do is call up Dave Rubin and go, "How did you do it?" Like, okay. I mean, if that's not the standard commentary of all time,
I'm Dave Rubin.
So, there it is.
Tucker's not going to have a launch problem if he.
No.
The key thing is, I don't want to see Tucker involved in fucking negotiating with anybody. I just want him to go. Tucker has plenty of money. He can just go write a check and stand up. He already knows how this all works. Yep. So the real question is, how long does Fox keep him in negotiations, and how much do they try to, I don't know what they force him on the bench. I'm most interested in how they try to steal his content, because they're going to disappear all the content, which is the problem. And he has, I'm sure he has some rights there to argue that if they're going to disappear all his content, he gets it. And so that's going to be a fight. I just don't want to see that fight last through the 24 cycle, because we need Tucker in the game. That's all. And
they're going to do everything imaginable to keep him off, keep him on the bench. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I can see.
There's rumors of an Oppo file. There's rumors of this and that, but like Abby Grossman, the producer, like we're hearing that she was never in the same room as Tucker. That doesn't really sound believable, unless they mean that she was always talking with him on Zoom. There's people out there telling you that she never even met him. So like, there's going to be some stupid,
thing,
just some dumb, like it's all a setup, like, and it's obvious. And there's both sides have their little things to fire. All that matters is how quickly it ends and how quickly Tucker is free to re-enter the public space. And hopefully that'll be 60 days.
What I'm very interested in is a news network that has real news anchors. I think Fox we've outlived the era of the hot babe news show now. I don't find those compelling. What's that?
I mean, other than like Aaron Burnett, were any of them hot?
Well, they all like. Well, so Fox is like a stripper.
To Trump,
Yeah, Fox is like a stripper, like a strip club. They got a type for every man. So they'd be like, "Oh, you were the Miss 1937. How about we hire you for the 92-year-olds?" And then they're like, "You're Miss 1964. How about we hire you?" And like the idea that like Miss 1964 has anything interesting to say, like you think she got that role like Miss America 1964 because of her brains. Yeah. I think that like we all know the truth.
Well, you're gonna love the next Trump.
She did it for her business acumen. Yeah, it's gonna be that's they get fired from Fox.
Yeah, and, this is how Trump. This is literally how Trump ran his whole administration.
The Fox News hot babe to Trump cabinet pipeline.
Yeah,
the lefties will call it. But yeah, no, it's like I think that era is over. I would rather see real news anchors delivering news. I'd rather see credibility in news. All of that stuff. But
there are no journalists. You can't. We killed the entire generational like feeder stack for that.
There are journalists, and they're old.
Yeah.
I think I honestly think that there's a lot of people who like really do operate under the old journalistic standards, who are just quiet because they're afraid. I've got some insight into the conditions of newsrooms right now. All of the real journalists are afraid. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to leave. They can't say anything. They're in Slack channels that lecture them about saying, "Hey guys," as like sexist. Like these are, and they're not just they're not lectured by people. They're lectured by bots, by the way. So like I know, like,
aren't we all?
Yeah. Well, I know that like a number of these, like you say, "Hey guys," and then like a bot will pop up like, "Guys is a non-inclusive language. How about you use words such as?" So like a lot of this stuff, they're automating the control of these journalists. They're monitoring them, they're watching them, and they're forcing them into compliance with all this woke bullshit. And it's just, I look at it and I think to myself, like, there's actually a lot of journalists out there that still abide by those old practices, and they're just too afraid to come out. And they're kind of like those dead Silicon Valley people that go to work every day so they don't get fired, but they collect a paycheck.
Oh, well, they're aging out. There's no future. There's no next generation coming in this. I mean, certainly not in the broadcast news.
But there could be, Dexter, like there could be, like if they can, before they age out, if we can get them into an organization and then young people to follow them such that you don't end up with activists, that would be the way to do it. Go into these towns, find blue collar guys that can actually write, and turn them into journalists.
Yeah,
bring back the non-elite journalist.
A friend of mine who's very smart has often told me that there was never a golden era in journalism. Like
That's
that
a
they
smart
were,
friend.
yeah, does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
And so like harkening back,
You're right.
this guy's name is Junseth, by the way.
Yeah. He's right.
Like there was never a golden age. It was always yellow journalism. And like, I don't think we lose anything. Like the myth of Cronkite being like some great, person, or like Dan Rather, like these people have always been full of shit. We just used to live in a politer society where the obviousness of the lies and the bias was, less. And now we live in a world where it's just overt propaganda and like, nonsense, and let it die. I don't think it's something we should miss. The only thing we need to care about is a freer future, and like there's going to be medium change coming, and like we have to make sure that the new media and all the channels therein are not run by bots who interrupt us and tell us to change our language. Like that's the fight.
Yep. Remember, we're the BTN. We don't make the news. That's the government's job. All right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. And I think I'm going to leave it there, and we'll do this again soon, or we'll do this again in the future. I really enjoyed having both of you on the podcast because there's always so much fun. I think this is just, aside from the fact that I don't get to talk to Junseth nearly often enough. So this is fun. And yes, I do enjoy it when he baits me into discussions about more war, less horrors. So with that said, I think I'm going to, this is Tom signing off. Dexter, Junseth, last word. Do your thing.
More wars, less horrors.
More nukes, less kooks.
Got it. All right, guys, we're out. Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 141 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. Thank you for tuning in. You can follow my work, as always, at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter, TFL1728, and you can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Gold, Goats, and Guns. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.